Alright, welcome to Paladin, the Paladin video. Augmentation Paladin. They do Paladin and stuff, and we're going to talk about it. So, there's a bunch of lore, okay? And compared to the other augment sections, there is actually additional stuff that you need to understand when you're playing a Paladin, okay? There are three, we're gonna dive right into it. There are three paths of Paladin, typically. There is Paladin Knight, Knight Errant, and Anti-Paladin. Paladin Knight is also commonly known as Sunburst. So I'm pretty sure this is Knight Errant is like a people are gonna be like, Solomon, you're messing this up. But there's good guy, bad guy, neutral guy, okay? Like that's essentially what this amounts to. Uh yeah, there are three distinct paths for Paladin to follow: Paladin Knight, Knights Errant, and Anti-Paladin. Paladin Knight, again, commonly understood in game as a Sunburst Paladin, a Sunburst. Knights Errant and Anti-Paladin. Your path will be determined based on the way that you react to situations and the challenges presented to you. Okay, I'm gonna get right into the fantasy aspect of Paladin. If you're playing Paladin, you're trying to typically play the I'm a knight, right? Like if you want to play the I'm a knight archetype, Paladin is the way that you do it. Honestly, there's other additional equivalents, there's other things, but in terms of the lore and roleplay, if you're trying to be a knight, you're trying to be a paladin. Like the number, there's ways to become knights of other regions and places and get titles and stuff, right? You can play the politics game all you want, and like do cool quests but if you're trying to be a paladin or a knight recognized by every single where you go, this is how you do it. Uh, and there we have a lot of cool paladins. Paladins are sick. I would say that paladin and worm are probably the most common uh augments, and that's not a bad thing. I would love to have more paladins in town. Um, there is a codes, which this is very much roleplay, but like you literally okay, the Paladin's Night. I don't know if I should read this. Like, I don't know if it's under the umbrella of what I'm really talking about, because a lot of this stuff I've just kind of been evaluating skills. I haven't really been evaluating the roleplay of the given uh augments. But like, you can't play Paladin and not run into this. Like, there's not you're as soon as guilds and ranks, there's like ranks and understanding that you're a squire. When you first learn Paladin, you're a squire, and then you ascend to become a knight. Let's see here. The guy that runs all the paladins is a dude named Gondor. That's an important thing to know if you're just. There are plenty of. The thing is that there's a ton of people who play paladins, and they would get so mad if I screwed something up. So, bear with me here. There's a dude named Gondor, and he leads all the paladins. Okay. After an aspiring paladin has learned his first ability or displayed his loyalty to the code, the knights will seek him out. Okay? Plot, if you're it's really cool because when it happens it's sweet, but like plot will come in as a bunch of paladin knights and they're gonna size you up and go like, "Yeah, so you want to be a paladin, eh? You want to join the paladins? You want to be a knight, huh? Are you gonna be a cool guy or are you gonna be a bad guy, huh?" Right? Like they size you up, and they definitely do show up. I've seen it happen. Um, if he will be given the option of joining and receiving Gondor. So you either accept that you're under Gondor, or you're giving a warning, like a hey, understand that you're not with us. And then if a person displaying paladin abilities commits an evil act, the knights are guaranteed to hunt you down. Okay. I've seen this happen. It does happen. When you become an anti-paladin, you're really a jerkface. And for the most part, anti-paladins are pretty much reserved for NPCs. Like, it's not that you can't be an anti-paladin. It's just gonna be really tough to be one and not just be killed by every member in town, okay? Like in terms of scumbag characters that you can play, an anti-paladin is pretty much up there as one of the scumbaggiest things you can do as a character is being an anti-paladin, okay? Um because they're just straight they are literally evil. So okay, if you're playing a paladin, you got to understand these. You take a code if you're playing a paladin knight or a sunburst, which is like be good, and then if you're playing an anti-paladin, you have to specifically know like this and represent this, and you have to be evil. Okay, and this is all dumb simplifications to kind of get the point across because this is just a video. As soon as you start playing and you like talk to people about how paladins are perceived and how paladins are role played, you'll understand it. It shouldn't be too tough. This is again just to like give you an overview of like what there's a lot more lore and role play, and it's not you don't get to opt out of it when you're playing a paladin. Okay, like it's very much you don't get to play a paladin and then opt out of the obligations of being a paladin. Okay, got to get that point across. Paladin is 50 Adept and 50 Avatar. So where Ascetic was Avatar and Rogue, this is Avatar and Adept. You may begin your ascension to the pinnacle of your studies in physical prowess, the Paladin. There are three possible makeup. There are three possible Paladins makeup depending on the code that they follow. Paladin Knights or Starbursts or Sunbursts have a yellow sun. Knight Errants have a black crescent moon, and Anti-Paladins have a black sun. So in game, a lot of people say Sunburst, Black Sun, and Moon. And there's like it's one of those things where like everybody kind of says it as a different way, but everybody knows what you're talking about when you say it. Um, And the rule book, I'm pretty sure I rarely ever hear the word. I'm just gonna get this across. I rarely ever hear Paladin Knight, and I most of the time hear Sunburst. Okay, like that's like the thing. And if you want to see an example of Sunburst, we can go right here. Boom. This is a Sunburst mark. This guy is a Paladin Dragon, and he is a Sunburst Paladin. That is what. And then a uh moon. So then one would be a crescent moon around the side of the eye, like this kind of. And then a dark sun would be, let's see, let me look at what the requirements were again. A dark suns have a black sun, so it would be all black, but it would be the same where you have like kind of a sun shape. This mark can be anywhere on the face. The player gets to choose which code to follow when they become paladin, assuming that it's not counter to their action. So if you're not a sunburst and you're not a bad guy, if you're not a super good guy and you're not a super bad guy, you're typically the knight errant or the or a knight. Yeah, you're typically a knight errant, which is like I'm trying to be a good guy, but there are times when I need to kill this scumbag, and like there are times when sunbursts would be like, no, we can't kill him even though he's evil. And there are times when knight errants would be like, no, we're killing this guy because he's evil, right? Like there's very much a line in the sand there that makes you either a sunburst or a knight errant for the most part. Okay, anyway, moving on to skills. Finally, okay, we're 8 minutes into this video. We're gonna move into skills. Had to cover that. It's very important when you're playing a paladin. If you're going to play a paladin, go to this page and read all of this. Literally read all of it and understand it. Okay, moving on. Uh, oh yeah, okay, and just like, oh, so this is the toughest one to cover because there's skills. So we'll go into the base, like every paladin has this skills, okay? So we're gonna skip the knight errants, the anti-paladin, like we're gonna skip the specific, like I'm a specific one of these three things, and we're gonna go just to the base skills. Paladin Judgment. Paladin does more damage against a target opponent for 1 and 1. Also, the ratio here is a 1 to 2 ratio for build to body, so you get pretty tanky for the amount of build you put in. Each time the per-use cost is paid, the Paladin gets plus 10 damage versus one opponent for combat duration. While it is possible to judge multiple targets, you may not pass judgment against a single target multiple times. To activate the skill, this Paladin must say, I judge you, or prepare to be judged, or something similar to their targets. So, without naming the character, for the longest time, they just retired. They retired maybe a year or two ago. I wasn't playing when they retired because of COVID. But they retired the character, and now like they were a really important knight errant paladin, and they played for a very long time. And the player is a really cool guy. Uh, and they retired, and now that character like runs stuff like in the lore. Like he's very important to like the Gondor guy, right? Like this name drop here, like he's very relevant to this guy. Um, and he's like super important. And for the longest time, he was an adventurer in town, and he was like super important, and he was being like the representative of paladins in like a town full of scumbaggy adventurers, murder hobos, right? And he was awesome, and he was always in the front lines, and he had a really cool kit, and that's what I think of most of the time when I'm thinking of a paladin. And it was super cool. And there's this is the reason why I'm talking about this is because of the skill. He used the skill once, and it just made me it like from the outside it's kind of funny, but it's so cool in the moment where it was like a one-on-one duel with like the biggest baddest guy and of like the town had ever seen or whatever, and it had to be a 1v1 fight. He's like, I'm holding these people hostage, you need to give me a champion of your town, like out of the 50 players. Like you had to like give me one guy. And this guy, I'm pretty sure he stood like he walked out of the crowd and was like, I judge you, or some, or like prepare to be judged. Like it was very from the outside it'd be pretty funny to see, but in the moment it was like, oh, that's sick, right? Like, oh, that's the skill. And it was, and he did it with like the full intensity that you would want. So like movie moment there, right? And that's what I think of when I think of this skill. It's super cool. You flat plus 10 damage versus one opponent, and it's just 1-1. You're paying 2 to do 10 for combat duration. That's amazing. We talked about it a bit with the living against the living with ghoul race, and they get plus 10 against living things, which is a lot of things, and that's like a very good skill. You get to do it against anything for 1-1. Uh, that's dirt cheap for plus 10 damage across. And like when you're swinging, think about it. You swing at the guy 10 times, that's another 100 damage, and all you paid was like 1-1, right? Like that's super good. This is like one of the best skills they have. And this is on base paladin. This isn't a specific knight errant or sunburst or anti paladin or whatever, right? Okay. Greater sanctuary. 1-1. We saw sanctuary in ascetic. Let's see. Please note the skill only allows you to ascend to the plane. Okay, yeah. So if you've seen, it's literally the same skill. If you've seen a static video, we covered this skill. And if you saw Kesserin and you were at the Kesserin race, like Elders race video, and I said, go find the Paladin video, this is it. So I'm going to redirect you to the ascetic video where we covered this. Get 3 views for the price of 1. Yeah, so we've covered this skill. For 1-1, it's okay, and ascending into astral is a very unique thing. Uh, let's see here. Spiritual immunity. Okay, so this is a base paladin skill. Every paladin will have this skill. However, this goes in again into roleplay. You're either immune to nature or you're immune to chaos, and a plot gets to determine it. So based off of like, are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? Are you respectively, are you immune to chaos or are you immune to good or to nature, right? Um, it's very much determined by plot, and it has to do with your roleplay. Okay. All right. Another thing that every paladin gets for the most part is paladin lay on hands. All right, we've all heard this skill if you've played Dungeons and Dragons and had a paladin in your party. Lay on hands, and it's about exactly what you think it is. The skill Lay on Hands is purchased only once. It has a special cost, but may be used as many times as you can afford to spend the points of Adept and Avatar. By touching your hand upon the intended target and stating Paladins Lay on Hand 1, 2, 3, you are bringing that individual to full body. I'm a Nullifidian. I really like getting healed. See how this doesn't say that it's magic? It's just a thing Paladins do. So no matter how you're healed, no matter what type of metabolism you have, a Paladin's Lay on Hands brings you to full body, which is awesome. I want as many Paladins as a Nullifidian. I want as many Paladins in town as possible, um, because they are one of the few people that can heal me no matter what. Paladins are sweet. They get to do lay on hands. Note that the actual no physical contact is actually required. So if for some reason you don't like the paladin player, or you are just very whatever about your personal space, you don't have to actually touch them. They kind of can just hover their hand over you and be like, lay on hands one. They don't actually have to lay their hand on you. Any target that may be healed is healed to full body, regardless of how they're healed. The cost to use this on yourself is 3 and 3. Okay, because you can lay on hands yourself. It costs more, and then to do it on others is 1 and 1. So this is an amazing skill. Every paladin wants this. I would love to play a paladin. You know, dude, I'd want to play a paladin. Man, that'd be sick. That'd be sweet. Uh, I should play a paladin. The cost to lay on hands is 1 and 1. So you're paying 1 and 1 to bring anybody to full, essentially, except yourself. You're paying 3 and 3 to do it to yourself. Uh, Amazing. Like this is S tier. This is top tier in terms of healing in the entire LARP, in the entire rulebook. Paladin lay on hands, amazing. You paid. There's no debate. You pick this up. There's 10 build. It's the one of the best skills in the game. Like when you think of like top 10, and obviously I don't know every skill in the game, and there's a whole section of rulebook skills that are hidden behind plot. But in terms of the whole rulebook that I have access to and understand, this is in the top 10 skills, in my opinion. Like, this is in the top 10 skill. I don't know if it's towards the top end of it, but it's definitely in the top 10. This is either like 10 or 8 or something, like somewhere in that range for me. This is an amazing skill. Paladin's Blessing. Let's see. Is this... Okay. We're gonna skip this because this is specific to, like, the good paladins. Spirit Blood. Paladin gains immunity to poisons, disease, and curses. You for 10 build, you are immune to poison, disease, and curse. Period. So it's the cost of 1 immunity for 3 immunities, essentially. Which is sick. There's not a whole lot to say here. We've already covered immunities a lot, and being immune to just flat out poison, disease, curses while time, amazing. Curses is unique. Specifically, curses is a very tough immunity to get, I would assume. Again, curses don't really come up a whole lot, but it's nice that you can't be cursed as a paladin. That's sick. And bad paladins also get this. Okay, bad guy paladins also get this. So you can't curse bad guy paladins. Keep that in mind. All right. Paladin spiritual weapon. So you get to summon a weapon, just like how Eldritch Trickster summons a spiritual, like a construct weapon. This is a spirit construct weapon for 10 and 10. The weapon must be white in color, have a 12-inch orange ribbon tied to the grip, is spirit linked, undisarmable, unshatterable, base 10 magic. So where Eldritch Trickster got an undisarmable, unshatterable, base 2 thing that let them spell strike for 5 and 5, these guys get undisarmable, unshatterable, base 10, okay? And it's also spirit linked, which is important when you're going into astral, okay? It matters for astral. It also means that like it's like linked to your spirit, so you can't like lose it essentially. Like you can't steal a spirit linked thing from somebody, barring weird rules. If the paladin is dispelled or suppressed, the paladin's weapon is destroyed and may be summoned again. Yep. Pretty good weapon, pretty good base weapon. All right, so now we're gonna get into some of the unique things. So, okay. It's only the blessings that are the given unique thing at base. Okay, so if you're a base paladin and you're a knight, so you got all these base skills, and then dependent upon which roleplay way that you went, you get a different blessing. So, Knight Errant's Blessing. These are the Crescent Moon guys. Paladin's Blessing. Paladin Knight. Yeah, okay. These are the Crescent Moon guys. These are the neutral guy. If you split it, it's not as simple as splitting it up into neutral, but I'm going to for the sake of this video. There's chaos, bad guys, neutral, which is neutral guys, and good guys, which is nature. Okay. So if you're the neutral guy, you can either remove the effects of a paladin or anti-paladin's blessing. It does not leave an effect on the target. So uh basically you get to kind of judge, like if they have a paladin's blessing and you judge them to be like not fit of a paladin's blessing, you can take the paladin's blessing off. Or if a bad guy gave them an anti-paladin's blessing, which is bad to have, uh you can remove it. So if you're like, oh no, you're like, they're the only people that get to remove that. Like there's not another way that you remove that, I'm pretty sure, besides dying. So being able, specifically if you're a neutral guy, the most relevant thing with the skill is that you get to remove anti-paladin blessings. That's what you get to do. Okay. We'll go into anti-paladin blessing. And the anti-paladin's blessing allows you to grant the terror of death to one person. It is not possible, and you do it for 5 and 5. I'm pretty sure they're all 5 and 5s. Yeah. Okay. It is not possible to have more than one anti-paladin's blessing upon your body at a time. The anti-paladin's blessing is an active effect that will cause the recipient to lose an extra point of vitality the next time they resurrect. So you lose 2 white stones if you die with an anti-paladin's blessing. It may the anti-paladin must place one hand upon the recipient and say anti-paladin's blessing. It may also be packet delivered. So bad guy paladins will walk into town and they will pay 5 and 5 to throw anti-paladin's blessings, and then the idea is that they have you on the ground, you're like dying in front of them, and they go anti-paladin's blessing, and then they vorp your ass, and now you're like resurrecting for 2 instead of like your normal 1, which is scary as hell. Losing 2 vitality is nuts, and losing 1 vitality sucks. Losing 2, awful. Okay. If this happens, also, if this happens to you while you're an ascetic, you lose 3, which is a funny thing to mention. Uh, but yeah, it's, you don't want one of these on you. You never want. It's possible to both have a paladin's blessing and an anti-paladin's blessing at the same time. By the way, it is possible to have both. Because because regular power, we're gonna get into regular paladin's blessing. But yeah, needless to say, you don't want one of these on you, and they get to bestow kind of an extra attack. It's kind of an attack. It's like you probably dodge this. I'm gonna say you probably dodge this if it thrown at you. Like it's bad enough that you're like, ooh, I should dodge that. But there's also, it's not immediately impactful enough where you're like, do I really want to spend 10 dodge to remove this if I know that there's a knight errant in town that can help me later with this? Or like, right? Like, it's very much a personal decision as to whether or not you dodge those. But I'll tell you right now, I dodge these. I 100% dodge these. All right. So Paladin's blessing. The Paladin's blessing allows you to grant the gift of life after death to one person. It is not possible to have more than one Paladin's blessing on your body at a time. This skill is usually reserved for rewarding a great deed performed in the presence of a paladin. Okay? Roleplay wise, you don't, like, the paladins, the good guy sunburst paladins, they do not just hand these out like candy. It is their main responsibility to, it is like that if you see a paladin handing these out to everybody around them for no reason, that's not a good thing. That paladin is not doing what they should be doing. You do not just hand these out like candy. You do not do that. Even if there's a paladin and they're in the house with their best buddy, they still theoretically shouldn't be handing that guy a paladin's blessing just because they're their buddy, right? Like it's not. Now keep in mind, you can do that. Okay, you can technically do that. I wouldn't recommend it because as soon as word gets out to the good guys, like the Night Order, that you're doing shit like that, they're gonna come talk to you about it, and you don't like getting talked to as by a bunch of Paladin Knights. It sucks. It's big. It's a lot of lecturing. Anyway, upon receiving a Paladin's blessing, you will not dissipate the next time you are killed. Instead of dissipating, you will rise at one body, and Paladin's blessing will be gone. So Just like how we talked about ghouls and mycelial that have devour living, where if they would crumble, like say you get vorped, you get vorpal slay and you didn't have a defense, you are instead of resurrecting, you pop back up at 1, uh, and your Paladin's Blessing is gone, but you didn't go resurrect, which is very important, okay? So Paladin's Blessings stop you from resurrecting. Keep in mind, this stacks, so you can have a Paladin's Blessing, a Vorpal Slay, and this is specifically in the rulebook. There is an oil, there's an alchemy that also does this, and a lot of people are walking around with that alchemy in their system, right? So if somebody walks up to you and you have 0 defenses, but you have a Paladin's Blessing, a Devour of the Living, and an Oil of Rejuvenation, I think is what it's called, and that's literally in the rulebook. You can find it. It's underneath the alchemy list. We will get to that when we cover artisan stuff, which I don't know when I'm going to cover artisan stuff, but I will cover it at some point. Anyway, it's in the list. I could talk about it. So theoretically, you could have 3 of these kind of effects if you're a ghoul or a mycelial. And so somebody could walk up and go Vorpal Slay, Vorpal Slay, Vorpal Slay, and you go Oil of Rejuvenation, Devour the Living, Paladin's Blessing, right? And you typically do it in that order. Like the Devour, like the oil, you can just buy another oil. The Devour the Living, you can just eat another thing. A Paladin's Blessing is something you try and hold on to for as long as possible. Okay, so you theoretically you want to kind of do it in that order because the oil is the cheapest thing and the easiest thing to get back. Or depending if you're playing a ghoul and mycelial and you feel like you could just eat another thing, like maybe that's the first one you use. Uh, but yeah, so Paladin's Blessings, super sweet. They're very important, and you want to keep them, and they stay from game to game. Same thing with the oils and the Devour Living. So theoretically, most people want to be walking around with an oil and a Paladin's Blessing, and people go out of their way to be like good in front of Paladins to get Paladin's Blessings, right? Um, Yeah, so it's also a cool thing. Like in roleplay, like when a paladin's like, yeah, you're a cool guy. You did this cool thing. Here's a paladin's blessing. It feels kind of like oh yeah, it feels like a special moment for you. It's really awesome. And being on the recipient side of that, and then I also imagine being on the giving side of that is really cool. I'm sure the roleplay is awesome, and I'm sure that's a great feeling to have. Okay, that was base paladin. 27 minutes in, that was base Paladin. Alright, moving on to Elder Paladin. We're going to talk about Enhanced Spiritual Weapon, 1 and 1. Paladin becomes enhanced based on their order. So I'm going to just dive deep into this. I'm screw the whole, like, oh, we're going to do these all at once thing, okay? Or like the typical, like the 3 different pathways at one given time. We're just going to go down down the line. Okay. In addition to the effects of Spiritual Weapon, a Paladin may pay 1 and 1 to strike for nature, a Knight Errant may pay 1 and 1 to strike for body, and an Anti-Paladin may spend 1 and 1 to strike for Magic Life Drain. Life Drain is a skill, or is a effect that you can find out what it does under Metabolisms and Monsters section. We will eventually make a video about specifically this when we get to Metabolisms. That's my brother. Uh, let's see. So yeah, that's neat. You get to pay 1 and 1 to being a knight errant and striking for body is cool. Striking for nature is relevant when it comes up. Don't play an anti-paladin, but if you're fighting an NPC anti-paladin, understand what my magic life drain does and why it's scary. All right. Conviction. So just how you had Spirit Blood, which gives you immunity to poisonous disease and curses, Conviction makes you immune to peace, fear, and shun effects regardless of type. So like even if this was unnatural peace or unnatural shun, like you still are immune to it. And it's about your conviction. Like fear doesn't affect you. Fear doesn't affect you. Peace doesn't affect you if you're a bad guy. And shun doesn't affect you if you're a neutral guy, like shunning. Shun is a cool spell. Go look it up. Pretty relevant. Persevere. So 10 build, 3 body. This is a 1 to. So what ratios are these? So this base paladin was a 2-to-1 ratio for build to body. And Elder Paladin is a 1 to 3 ratio. That's important to know. Paladin may preserve through an effect that would crumble them. If conscious, by paying 5 and 5, the Paladin may pay the per use cost to call Persevere as a defense against any effect that would cause the Paladin to crumble or dissipate. It is not possible to use this ability to prevent dissipation after 10 minutes of being dead or similar death timers. If you're conscious. So if you're dead on the ground, like you bled out, and then you actually like normally would dissipate, you can't use this skill. But that's not going to come up very often. Uh, this is amazing, by the way. This is a great skill. So this is a defense to Vorpal Slay, I guess. Against a defense against any effect that would otherwise cause the paladin to crumble or dissipate. So I don't know if this means that you would theoretically dissipate and then you pop back up at 1, but it also could also mean that like if like somebody Vorpal slayed you, because we could talk about that. There's a bunch of other effects that also do that crumble you instantly. We've that are mostly rituals. But persevere, I don't know if that's just like a valid defense, like it is like a yeah, that didn't affect me at all, so I'm still at my body total and whatever, and all my stuff is the same. Or if it's like your Paladin's Blessing, where you're crumbling and then you're not crumbling, so you're going into 1. I don't know. That's actually an important question to ask. And if you're going to become an Elder Paladin, you probably want to know how that works. Okay. Still, super good. Super good. You just get to pay 5 and 5 to effectively have a potentially better Paladin's Blessing. Sick. Sick. Killing a paladin is hard, by the way, if you haven't figured that out. Permanently killing a paladin is hard. Killing a regular paladin is pretty difficult. Enhanced judgment. One build special. They may now pay 2 and 2 to increase the damage of judgment to 25 damage. In addition, the cost of unnatural fear piece shun is reduced to 2 and 2 against judged targets. Unnatural fear piece shun. Did I miss a thing? Or is that going to come up? No. Okay. Oh, okay. It'll come up later. Okay, good to know. In addition, the cost of unnatural fear, peace, and shun is reduced to 2 and 2 against judge targets. Okay. I mean, so you get a judge. Your plus 10 goes to 25. To increase the damage gain. Okay, and then also your fear and shun against those targets is reduced, which is cool. We're gonna get into that, I guess, when they come up. And that was specifically for any, yeah. I don't think, yeah, all 4 of these are just basic paladin, base elder paladin. So you're not a specific thing to get these. All right. Lay on hands, paladin knight. So this is a sunburst. So this is as lay on hands, however, the target is dead, the target is bright. So this now, instead of just healing somebody to full, like if they were bleeding, this now functions as a grant life as well, which is sick. Super sweet. Grant lifing somebody is awesome. And again, works on Nullifidians and people who have different metabolisms. It does. This isn't a grant life effect specifically. It just brings you back from dead, which is sweet. So this works regardless of anybody's metabolism. So there, and it doesn't. It's 2 and 2, but I'll gladly pay 1 more to do it to make it a grant life effect on somebody. That's pretty sweet. Okay. Lay on hands to Paladin Knight. Lay on hands to Knight Errant. So yeah, Lay on Hands was a base Paladin skill, so every Paladin has it. So your Lay on Hands 2 is different if you're a Knight Errant, Anti-Paladin, or Paladin Knight. So let's see what Knight Errant does. Lay on Hands. So instead of being a grant life, you heal them to full, and all poisons, diseases, and brew effect are removed from the target. That's cool. And then, if you're a bad guy, if they're bleeding to death, unconscious, or dead, you may instead choose to crumble it, and you are then healed to full, regardless of how you are healed. So if you're a bad guy, this lets you use your lay on hands to eat something essentially, and like gain full health back, or crumble something. You get to absorb their life essence in effect, kind of, which is sick and also scary. I've seen this happen, and it's not cool when it happens. It's scary, and people cry. Uh, Paladin Knight, Sunburst, Shield of Courage. Upon activating the skill for 3 and 3, you may call Shield of Courage. The Paladin may call Fear Shield on any fear effect that would otherwise affect someone within his weapon's reach. This skill functions for combat duration, has no additional per fear effect cost. Okay, so if you're standing around the Paladin when they call Shield of Courage, the Paladin can call Fear Shield on any fear thing for combat duration and has no additional effects. So you pay 3 and 3, and then you get to help your buddies be immune to fear around you, which is cool. It's pseudo immune because they have to call it every time, which is sick. Unnatural Shun. If you're a knight errant, acts as the shun spell, but is considered not a spell for the purposes of defenses packet delivered. Unnatural stuff is spooky because it's not technically a spell. So it's the effects. So what you're saying is this is coming from an unnatural place being. It's coming innate. It's almost close to innate, but there is actually a thing called innate casting, which still counts as a spell. This is more deep. This is more fundamental of a effect. This is like my being as a whole is shunning you, as opposed to this spell I cast is shunning you, right? So that's what unnatural typically means. And unnatural, you're gonna run into an unnatural something or another eventually, and somebody's gonna explain it to you, but. Hopefully that was kind of a good explanation. But yeah, you get a shun stuff for 3 and 3 unnaturally, which is sick. Which means that you don't care if people are immune to shuns by the shun spell. Anti-paladins, instead of shunning, they get to fear things, and it's an unnatural fear, which means that I'm pretty sure that means that if you were immune to fear normally, you can't. It also works. Maybe that's how that works. I don't know. Unnatural is weird sometimes. And then the neat one. So you're like, shun, inflict pain or inflict fear. What does the middle neutral guy does? He can compel a willing or immobilized. So willing or immobilized, which means you can tie him up with a packet and call Truth Seeker. The target is compelled to answer the knight errant's next question truthfully. One question per 5/5. This is sick, and it's very funny and relevant when it comes up, because there's definitely times where we've taken a bad guy and we've strung him up and been like, tell us the truth, and interrogation scene style. And this guy lets you force people to tell truthful questions. There's ways also to get around this, which you might see when we go into the paths. But let's see. Anti-paladin thing that you get to do. Anti-paladin can dominate another means bind. May touch an immobilized, unconscious, or otherwise helpless target with pack and say unnatural dominate. The skill may not be packet delivered at range. So you can like steal some. So if you like knock somebody down, you can be like unnatural dominate, and then you could use your normal lay on hands and not crumble them, and you could heal them to full, but they're under your domination now. Like they're enslaved to you. They do what you say. So it can be like you're fighting an NPC anti-paladin, and the anti-paladin throws down like the big tanky guy that was sitting in front of your line, right, that you were hiding behind, and that guy goes down, and the dude immediately goes like unnatural dominate, lay on hands 1, lay on hands 2, lay on hands 3, get back up, kill your friends. Like I've seen that that's happened before, and it's not good when it happens. It's scary. Because you don't want to crumble your buddy, but you also don't want to get crumbled yourself. So it's tough to when that happens. It's very definitely an evil thing to do. Anti-paladins may willingly choose to accept curses. Sure, for one build. I have no idea why why they would willingly accept curses. I have no idea. Anyway, paladins gain abilities when berserked based on their order. Oh, this is unique. So every paladin would have this. This isn't specific to, but then there's a specific effect to berserk. So Sunburst Paladin Serenity. The paladin is immune to berserk frenzy and hate. Cool. Knight Errant. Focus. The knight may preferentially target in a berserk and switch targets for 1 and 1 in a frenzy. Anti-paladin Spite. They gain an additional +4 strength when affected by a berserk frenzy or hate. Okay. Sure. None of these Berserk is interesting, and essentially what this amounts to is, hey, I'm a Sunburst guy. I'm immune to Berserk, Frenzy, and Hate. Like you can't make me hate something because I'm a good guy. Like I'm an infallible good guy for the most part. Knight Errant, you get to like be neutral and you can kind of like pick because Berserk effect is interesting. It's like you're in a rage, you're seeing red, and you attack anything around you. And then when the anti-paladin gets it, they just get additional strength. It's interesting. For 10 build, this is most relevant. Honestly, this is the most relevant part. Is this if you're a Sunburst, like if you're a Knight Errant, you don't really care about this. And if you're an anti-paladin, stop playing an anti-paladin. You're a scumbag. But if you're a Sunburst, you're immune to Berserk, Frenzy, and Hate. That's what this skill is. All right. Paladin is now immune to Death, Wrath, and Life Drain effects. Wrath, being immune to Wrath. That's sick. And Life Drain effects. So Grant Death doesn't work on you, and Death poisons, like Death Swing from an Ascetic, doesn't do anything to you. Might as well just be normal damage. Now, being immune to death doesn't mean that you can't go to the death state. It means you're immune to the effects that immediately drop you to death that specifically say death. So, like, this doesn't make you immune to Slay. Okay? Slay brings you to the death state, but in and of itself, it is not a death effect. It's just a weapon skill, right? So death poison, death, the base suppressible aura from a ascetic lets you base swing death through body weaponry. So if they went like death slay, then you would be immune because you're immune to death. But if they just went slay, you wouldn't be immune to slay, right? Being immune to wrath is sick, and life drain is cool because you're not. This is specifically for sunbursts, and you're going to be immune to life drain, which is what the evil guys get to swing. We saw that skill earlier. Paladin Knight. Paladin may grant peace to packet deliver a natural peace similar to the spell, but of the spell name, but not a spell for the purposes of defenses. 3/3. You get a 3/3 peace something unnaturally. That's pretty cool. You get to be a peacemaker. Yeah, so that was Paladin. Uh, kind of wordy. Pretty long. We're at 42 minutes. Um, there's a ton of cool roleplay, man. I would play a paladin, and we have a ton of paladins, and don't let that assuage you that you're like not gonna be your cool knight that you want to be. There are tons of paladins, and there are some paladins that aren't really fighting. Like they're not I'm wearing a ton of armor and I'm frontline fighting. No, there's plenty of paladins that are avatar casters that picked up paladin and they just like spend all of their time healing, and they have really good healing with like lay on hands and stuff, and they sit in the back and they do spellcasting. Like being a paladin doesn't none of these short of like judgment specifically says that like influences you to be like fighting in the front line, right? You just get a cool immunities and you can bring people to full and you can give them blessings and stuff as base. This is a sick augment to multi-augment with, which again is probably, if we go back to this guy, that's probably why he picked Dragon, which was also a pretty good augment to be multi-augmenting with, and he picked Paladin. So yeah, that was Paladin. Gondor is an important name to remember. Uh, and there's like a ton of extra lore here about being a squire and like moving up the ranks of Paladin. Uh, and yeah, and this is very much regularly seen in the plot lines and stuff. Like paladins have a lot to do with some of the plot lines occasionally, so it's important. Like most people in game, even if they're not a paladin, know about this stuff because paladins do regularly, and their lore regularly influences the given plot lines for events. So yeah, so if you want to be a cool knight and you want to be relevant to the plot a bunch of the times, Paladin's a great way to go, and it's also a really cool skill set and tons of roleplay. Really awesome. I want as many Paladins in our game as possible. Paladins are sick. I have a buddy who just started playing. We recently started playing again. Uh, me and my brother played our first event just last Sunday or Saturday, and we brought our buddy around for his first ever event, and he freaking loved it, man. It was awesome, and he is playing a Kesserin, and he's gonna go become a Paladin, which is sweet. But yeah, so that was Paladin. Next up is Reaver. Woo, Reaver. Reaver is my favorite augment personally for me, so it's gonna be exciting. But that was Paladin. Thank you for watching.